Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm so glad that you could join us today for this Wednesday, July 25th, 2001 broadcast. Tyranny is enveloping the globe, and the United States is a shining jewel the globalists want to bring down, and they will use terrorism as the pretext to get it done. I want you to find out these statements were true by the White House about preparing for martial law, and I want you to let them know that if there is any terrorism, we know who to blame. Call the White House and tell them, we know the government's planning terrorism. We know the Joint Chiefs of Staff wanted to blow up airliners, Baltimore Sun. If you do it, we're going to blame you because we know who's up to it. If any terrorism comes, it's from this government. And if there was an outside threat like a bin Laden, who was a known CIA asset in the 80s, running the Mujahideen war, and whose family builds all the military bases over in Saudi Arabia right now, and sits on the board of Iridium Satellite. He's the boogeyman they need in this Orwellian phony system.
We are here today to effect a change. We are here today to ask those still sleeping to wake up and join us. We are here today to present a case forged in science at the bedrock and common sense in its foundation. We are here today to fire a warning shot across the bow of mainstream media to remind them of their original responsibility as civil and political watchdogs. We are here today to fuel the deconstruction of the official myth. We are here today to unleash a juggernaut of truth. We are also here today to honor the victims and the families of 9/11.
You know him from movies like Platoon and Wall Street, and in addition to seeing him every week on 2.5 Men, opening tonight, you can see him in Scary Movie 4. Please welcome the indestructible Charlie Sheen. Happy almost Easter.
Hey, back at you. Thank you.
You had some interesting comments. You were on a radio show and you talked about 9/11, and you have is it a theory or you just don't believe the government account of what happened on 9/11?
I just had questions.
Yeah?
I had a lot of questions, and the forum I chose to voice those questions in is the Alex Jones radio show, and just because he's a guy that I've been a fan of and followed for a lot of years, and you know, I got attacked. I mean, there were a lot of hit pieces. The reaction was
people get
severe.
very mad when celebrities have opinions.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
I understand. I know he's not qualified. He doesn't. You know, he's just who the hell is he to have an opinion about something so horrible? And you know, it was sad because they didn't really take a look at any of the stuff I was asking them to look at, any of the evidence or any of the stuff that generated those questions. You know, and they said, oh, he's another tinfoil hat wearing Hollywood clown. You know, and it's like the only. You know, I felt that the only real validation I needed was just being a tax-paying American that loves my country.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just something that you wonder about, and you would like to know more about,
Sure.
I assume. And do you, did you study the tapes? And
I've done a lot of research, and it's not just me, it's the people that have come before me, the experts and the engineers and the physicists and the scientists and the scholars that raised a lot of these things, and I took a look at their research and said, yeah, it doesn't add up. A lot of it doesn't add up. Hence these questions, you know. And there's two areas. There's Building 7, and there's the 5 frames from the Pentagon. Don't listen to me. Do your own research, you know. But I think that, you know, what happened to a time in this country when we were entitled, when we had a constitutional and a God-given right to be curious about things that didn't make sense. That's all it was.
Because we have a lot of cable shows now, and thank you. And they need stuff to be mad about. So, you know, stuff like this is like, oh boy, we could yell about this for an entire week.
A Charlie Sheen shocker. Tonight, the actor's stunning statements on 9/11. Maybe the airplanes did not take down the Twin Towers. And maybe the government is covering it all up.
Taking over 4 commercial airliners and hitting 75% of their targets, that feels like a conspiracy theory.
Showbiz Tonight investigates the startling allegations.
Charlie Sheen, star of CBS's successful sitcom 2.5 Men, says point blank, 9/11, the Pentagon, the World Trade Center, all a cover-up. Is this for real? Well, Showbiz Tonight has the tape that has people asking, what's the truth?
The more you look at stuff, especially specific incidents, specific events in or around the fateful day, it just raises a lot of questions.
The questions Charlie Sheen is raising about the 9/11 attacks are raising a lot of eyebrows. Our email inbox immediately started to overflow, and the coverage on Showbiz Tonight is getting a lot of attention. The website 9/11 Blogger calls Showbiz Tonight's coverage, quote, the first time a major news station has covered 9/11 questions in any reasonable format. It all started with a radio interview Sheen gave to GCN radio network host Alex Jones, a cult hero of sorts to 9/11 conspiracy theorists. Well, during the interview, Sheen made clear that he backs Jones' views.
We're not the conspiracy theorists on this particular issue. It seems to me like, 19 amateurs with box cutters taking over 4 commercial airliners and hitting 75% of their targets. That feels like a conspiracy theory.
Sheen also made another shocking suggestion that we may not know the full story about the collapse of the World Trade Center.
I have a hard time believing that a fireball traveled down the elevator over 1,100 feet and still had the explosive energy to destroy the lobby like it was described. I said, hey, call me insane, but did it sort of look like those buildings came down in a controlled demolition?
When I was your age, I could only dream about my parents splitting up.
As the star of the hit sitcom 2.5 Men, Sheen is seen weekly by about 10 million people, and many of them may end up paying attention to his controversial comments on 9/11.
Now, as Charlie Sheen ranting like a lunatic about the September 11th attacks, now word comes that Sheen will be narrating a new film about 9/11 conspiracy theories.
I had a sense that this thing was going to get hot. I didn't realize that, as you say, it was going to go supernova. That if they continue to attack me personally, it only gives credence to our side of the argument. People want the truth. They want the truth. And what's been offered to us resembles nothing of the sort.
We have been getting an overwhelming response to our Showbiz Tonight question of the day. Charlie Sheen speaks out. Do you agree with his assertion that there is a government cover-up of 9/11? Let's take a look at how the vote is going so far. 82% of you say yes.
Very cruel. Very cruel. Yeah, I don't know Charlie. I know his dad, Martin Sheen. We worked together on the issue of the homeless in the 80s and the 90s. Charlie's one of those charming guys, like Rosie O'Donnell, who had similar views. I think that they have swallowed this Kool-Aid, where they, in defiance of the facts, in defiance of the historic record, in defiance of their own eyes and witnessing what happened when those planes smashing into the buildings, they are hurting the victims' families, the survivors, because they continue to raise this preposterous notion that the United States government would be so hideously manipulative that we would kill almost 3,000 of our own citizens as a pretext to going to war in Afghanistan.
Do you think Sheen is crazy?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. I think he's crazy.
I think that he has a trick gene or a screw loose.
The White House had no intention of making public.
President Bush was told in August that Osama bin Laden might be planning an attack involving the hijacking.
Could have predicted.
Nobody in our government, at least.
August 6th PDP.
I believe the title was Bin Laden Determined to Attack Inside the United States.
70% of family members' questions were never answered during the 9/11 Commission report.
Lee Hamilton and Thomas Keane said they were set up to fail.
I mean, I'm a member of the commission. It's a scam. It's absolutely disgusting.
The questions, Mr. President. The questions.
Building 7 ablaze at the moment and apparently getting ready to collapse.
Building 7. freefall collapse.
Well, no, there's number 7 coming down. The excitement and the fun that people get watching an old building being demolished, and they wired very carefully for days, and it's a very careful operation.
Third time today. It's reminiscent of those pictures we've all seen too much on television before, when a building was deliberately destroyed by well-placed dynamite to knock it down.
The smartest thing to do is pull it. And they made that decision to pull, and then we watched the building collapse.
Jane, what more can you tell us about the Salomon Brothers building and its collapse?
Well, only really what you already know. Details are very, very sketchy.
We're getting information now that one of the other buildings, Building 7 in the World Trade Center complex, is on fire and has either collapsed or is collapsing.
The Pentagon. Vanishing airplane.
From my close-up inspection, there's no evidence of a plane having crashed anywhere near the Pentagon. The only site is the actual site of the building that's crashed in, and as I said, the only pieces left that you can see are small enough that you could pick up in your hand. There are no large tail sections, wing sections, a fuselage, nothing like that anywhere around, which would indicate that the entire plane crashed into the side of the Pentagon.
Firefighters and police describing explosions. A lot of them.
The secondary explosion. We've got numerous people covered with dust from the secondary explosion.
Floor by floor instead of popping out.
It was if they had detonated.
Yeah,
if they were planned to take down a building. Boom, 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 boom.
Looks sort of like the building just demolished.
Even if there was no secondary explosives in the building.
Kind of like gunfire. You know, bang, 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 bang. And then all of a sudden, 3 big explosions.
Do you know if it was an explosion or if it was a building collapse?
To me, it sounded like an explosion.
Chief Albert Turry told me that he tried to get his men out as quickly as he could, but he said that there was another explosion which took place, and then an hour after there was another explosion in one of the towers here.
Sibel Edmonds, FBI translator, breaking her gag order.
All our intimate relationship with bin Laden and Taliban. We did carry very intimate relationship with these people all the way up to September 11.
Bin Laden was spirited into this military hospital in Rawalpindi for kidney dialysis treatment. The military had him surrounded. They were saying that Osama bin Laden had to be watched carefully and looked after.
NORAD, standing down. Where were the planes?
On now to one of the eeriest moments amid the carnage of 9/11. A mysterious plane was seen flying right over the president's residence.
The E-4Bs over New York and Washington, otherwise known as the Doomsday Planes.
It has never been officially explained.
Cell phones working at impossible altitudes. Solicitor General Ted Olson receiving phone calls that the FBI says were never made.
What happened during that call? This is the only information we have on these terrorists.
She was able to call him twice. How she could pull that off, we don't know, but she did.
These are the questions, Mr. President. These are the questions. They go on and on.
Mark Twain.
Could all be accident. 4 planes destroying 4 different buildings. Why was Building 7 pulled down? Why was the steel quickly cut up from those holocausts and shipped to foreign mills? What happened to the black boxes and all the information that they should contain? Were they all destroyed by the fires? Well, if the black boxes were destroyed, how could a simple little passport, and I believe it was Muhammad Atta's, was discovered at the site of the crash?
What do you think about your son promoting 9/11? Is that you're behind him now? You think that's
I've been out of the country for a couple of months, and I don't know what's really gone down on that. I know he had some serious questions, and I think all of us should be inquisitive about that. We should know what really happened. I don't know, but there are some very troubling unanswered questions, and I think that's all Charlie's wanting to explore. So I support that.
Well, there are just so many things, so many questions that have not been answered. Very disturbing questions, especially when you look at them from a contextual standpoint.
Those things for me that bother me
is the hole in the Pentagon being too small for a plane. The lawn isn't mussed up, and the government's not showing the plane hitting when many cameras photographed it. At the World Trade Center, 3 buildings came down like demolition, and 2 of them were hit by a plane, but the 3rd one, they said, "Do you want us to pull it?" And they pulled it, and it looked just like the other 2. Those things bother me. In Pennsylvania, the plane that went down, it was just a hole in the ground. There wasn't any wreckage. There wasn't any skid marks. There wasn't any tear in the earth. And no one's ever really found out about that. So every place, there's questions. And you look back and you remember what you saw and what you were told, and now you have questions.
And the event itself, did it change your life, or did it change your view of...
Now it's just an event that has many questions and no answers.
9/11 is very interesting. Very interesting. I have no answers. I have questions. I know when I build something and I knock it over, it falls over. It doesn't fall down. So why did it fall? Why did they fall down?
Let me start from the beginning, because this is a lot of stuff. You have a real issue with the fact when there's 19 hijackers they put up on the website, and like 5 or 7 of them are still alive. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So that in and of itself grinds your story to a halt, grinds the official story to a halt.
Right.
Building 7, there's no way that building wasn't detonated. Everybody knows it. Nobody wants to talk about it, except for the people who, from an architectural standpoint or an engineering point of view, just go, there's no other way this building came down. Nothing fell on it. There was not enough fire. End of story. Buildings don't fall like that. That's just stupid.
Absolutely.
There just seems to be more questions left unanswered than anything else. And, you know, I don't want to jump into any conclusions, but I also don't think it's ever been given its due diligence, considering that it is the largest crime ever committed on U.S. soil.
You know, everybody has their own perspective or their own understanding of what happened. Not very many people know why it happened or who did it. A lot of people think it's an inside job. You know, if you look on the internet and you look at all of the information that they have around that, something's wrong. Something's absolutely wrong.
There are 2 classic techniques of mass mind manipulation and emotional manipulation. One of them I call problem reaction solution, the other one I call the totalitarian tiptoe. Problem reaction solution is devastating. It's been used for as long as you can chart back human history. And it goes like this. You want to change society or get people to accept something that in the normal course of events they wouldn't accept. So you don't say openly, this is what we're going to do and this is why we're going to do it. You play this technique, PRS, problem reaction solution. Stage 1, you create a problem. It could be a manufactured virus in a laboratory. It could be an economic collapse. It could be a war. It could be a terrorist attack like 9/11. You then, through a pathetic, unquestioning media, which at ownership level and lower levels too you control, you get through the media, you tell the people the version of that problem that you want them to believe, i.e. swine flu broke out on a pig farm in Mexico. Yeah, flying pig farm. Thank you very much. That 9/11 was orchestrated by a guy with a beard in a cave in Afghanistan and all that stuff. You want a reaction at stage 2 from the public of outrage, of classically fear, and you want them to either say to the authorities, do something, or you want them to accept what the authorities suggest must be done. So you can go to stage 3, which is to offer the solutions to the problems you have.
They create. Basically what they do is they take a stable society of individuals who are doing their own thing. They're making a little love, making a little money, making a few mistakes, and living within a given system. Then they introduce radical changes to that system. They introduce radical new ideas.
Our enemy is a radical network of terrorists and every government that supports them.
They introduce radical new threats.
The people of the United States and our friends and allies will not live at the mercy of an outlaw regime that threatens the peace with weapons of mass murder.
We will meet that threat now with our Army, Air Force, Navy, Coast Guard, and Marines, so that we do not have to meet it later with armies of firefighters and police and doctors on the streets of our cities.
And they get all the people prepared to make entirely new decisions and think in entirely new ways that facilitate more plans for more control by the people at the top.
You're free, and freedom is beautiful. And, you know, it'll take time to restore chaos and order, but we're order out of chaos, but we will.
You're free, and freedom is beautiful. And you know it'll take time to restore chaos and order out of chaos, but we will. He was quoting the 33rd degree motto, order out of chaos, or as I've dubbed it, problem, reaction, solution. Simple, devastating, played on us by the day.
On the American TV drama Rescue Me, actor Daniel Sunjata plays a New York firefighter, convinced the government was behind 9/11.
It's disrespectful to the memories.
No, dumbass. What's disrespectful is swallowing that spoon-fed Kool-Aid that's parading as the official account of 9/11 hook, line, and sinker. Like 99.9% of the people in this goddamn country. I am honoring the memories of those who were lost, okay? I'm honoring my brothers. My brothers by asking questions.
Sunjata says it was only while researching his role that he became a 9/11 truth activist.
Where the cognitive dissonance comes from people who just can't even entertain the possibility that that depth of betrayal, that their government, that their own government, not the entire government, but a criminal faction within it, could have been responsible for murdering American civilians in order to advance a geostrategic agenda. In the aftermath of 9/11, we were told that we were attacked by Islamic radicalists who hated America because we were free, essentially. That was their basic explanation for what happened on the day. That, even on the day, didn't really seem to make a whole lot of sense to me. However, in the course of my own investigations into 9/11, I came across Project for a New American Century's document called Rebuilding America's Defenses, in which they lay out basically a plan for establishing, you know, American hegemony going into the next 3 or 4 decades. And they say at the end of the document that a new Pearl Harbor would advance and expedite that agenda. This is a year before 9/11. After 9/11, you have the unfolding of that very same agenda. 9/11 could arguably have been that new Pearl Harbor event which they invoked, which they themselves said would help them expedite their plans and their agenda. So this is an issue that should concern all Americans.
In the year 2000, an organization in America called the Project for the New American Century produced this document, Rebuilding America's Defenses, Strategies, Forces, and Resources for a New Century, September 2000, 1 year before 9/11. In this organization that produced this document were all the major players that 9 months after this was produced entered the White House and the Pentagon with the Bush administration. Cheney, Rumsfeld, Paul Wolfowitz, who was Deputy Defense Secretary at the time of 9/11, he's now head of the World Bank. And a stream of other people who have become known as neocons. Michael Ledeen in the top left-hand corner, connected into Licio Gelli and P2 and all that stuff in Italy. Richard Pearl, one of the great architects of the invasion of Iraq. John Bolton, another architect of the invasion of Iraq, now United Nations ambassador for America. Feith, another one. Jeb Bush, who is the president's brother. And this guy, William Crystal, who's a Murdoch clone in America, who's the chairman, or at least was chairman, unless they've changed it since I last looked, of the Project for the New American Century. So what did this document say in September 2000? It said that this process of transformation, all this list of things it wants to happen, would be likely to be a long one, absent some catastrophic and catalyzing event like a new Pearl Harbor. Those words were published in September 2000. 1 year to the month later, we had what Bush called at the time our Pearl Harbor. Catastrophic and catalyzing event. Elephant in the living room.
What you're going to hear from me, you're not going to hear from anybody else, because My opinions, well, let's just say they're not popular. 9/11? Inside job, plain and simple. All you gotta do is connect the dots, and I'm not talking about the dots everyone's already heard about. I'm not talking about Bush sitting in that school reading a book about a goat to those kids for 7.5 minutes after he was told the news. Everybody knows that. I am talking about a massive neoconservative government effort. It's been in the works for over 20 years. You ever hear of PNAC, Project for New American Century?
Perhaps.
Yeah, well, according to them, the end goal of their effort is American global domination. Full spectrum dominance, they call it. Now, the first question that pops to my mind is, how do you pull that off in this day and age? Well, according to them, you do it in 4 steps. First, we must control the world's oil, especially the oil in Central Asia and the Middle East. Now, I don't have to remind you that Bush Cheney, they came to power with plans already made to attack Afghanistan and Iraq. Number 2, we have to make huge technological advances with our armed forces that for some reason include the capability to fight wars from outer space. Number 3, surprise, surprise, huge increases in military spending to pay for the above, $130 billion a year worth. Now, never mind the sick and dying first responders, 9/11's heroes, who can't even pay their light bill, let alone their medical bills, and a lot of whom are ending up homeless because of it. I guess there's just not enough room in the budget for them. Number 4, and this is key, we changed the definition of preemptive attack so we can unilaterally bomb the shit out of, invade, and occupy countries even if they pose no credible threat or had nothing to do with 9/11. One problem, how are you gonna put it into action? I mean, the American people are never gonna go for no shit like that, right? You're damn straight. Now what you need is an event. An event that gets everyone's heads turned around the right way. What you need is a new Pearl Harbor. That's what they said they needed. Now, you're looking at a guy who went to 58 funerals in 26 days. I can tell you that is sure as shit what they got.
All right, take 1 and 2, 1. This is as close as we can get to the base of the World Trade Center. You can see the 2 towers. Debris continues to fall and to rain on the people below. There are people hanging from the windows 90 stories up, and a number of bodies have actually hit the pavement. Another one? Take 2. Take 2 and 2, 1. This is as close as we can get to the base of the World Trade Center. You can see the firemen assembled here, the police officers, FBI agents, and you can see the 2 towers. A huge explosion now waiting to bring out all of us. There was an explosion on floor 7-8. 7-8. 73 to dispatch, we've just had another explosion. Warren Street because of the secondary explosion. We've got numerous people covered with dust from the secondary explosion. And we got another explosion on the tower, 1013. 1013 down 2 has had a major explosion and what appears to be a complete collapse surrounding the entire area. Who's involved in the secondary explosion?
I was up early, actually, and we were going to do a pre-shoot on Spin City, the show I used to do. And so, gosh, I was up, and I was watching the news, and the North Tower was burning. And so, you know, the world was focused on what I guess they were assuming to be pilot error, right, or some tragedy nobody could really explain. And so I saw the South Tower hit live. That famous wide shot where it disappears behind the building, and then we see the tremendous fireball, you know. Later on that day, I was with my brother. I was at my parents' house, and we were out on the deck, and I said, hey, call me insane, but did it sort of look like those buildings came down in a controlled demolition? And he said, well, kind of, but gosh, that's impossible if you think about what it would take for them to orchestrate that. And so as the days and the weeks went on, I was sort of told what to believe. And I was told through mainstream media and all of the talking heads about what really happened.
But I'm told that with the reason it imploded was so much heat from above and so much fuel on the jets that caused it to go down rather than go over.
Never before has a building collapsed because it was hit by an airplane, a steel building. Never before.
There was bombs in there. You could see them going off on each floor. You know what I'm saying? You know, I learned that from watching Loose Change. Like, that was one of the illest documentaries I ever seen. And just the fact that, you know, that level of fire and heat and from the jet fuel can't melt steel. That can't melt that kind of steel. Like, you got actual building engineers and still people telling you that can't happen.
Yeah, there's over 1,000 of them.
Yeah, like
engineers.
like that can't happen. Yeah, you got fire department people that telling you that bombs was going off that day while they were in the building.
Yeah, many of them my friends who came out and said the government's lying to you. I don't know if you know William Rodriguez. He's the janitor that worked in there. He heard bombs going off in the building before the planes even hit the building.
William Rodriguez, a maintenance employee at the World Trade Center and the last human being to exit the towers alive, describes a giant blast below his building.
And all of a sudden we heard an explosion. It was a huge explosion that came from under my feet, meaning that it came from the sub-levels between B2 and B3. And then there was a huge explosion at the top of the building. You could hear the difference from the bottom and all the way through the top. The one from the top, which was actually seconds after, was heard very far away. The one at the basement was pretty loud, and you felt your actual feet moving with the floor. The tremor that is sent through the floors, that the walls cracked and the false ceiling totally collapsed.
When I watched the DVD of William Rodriguez, this guy is totally talking from what he remembers. You can clearly see it. He's not making anything up.
Well, he was there. The firefighters and police say that he stayed in to get a lot of them out when things were starting to collapse.
Oh, he's a hero's hero. There's no doubt about it. And when you hear him talk and he tells about what he knows there, how can you not question what went on that day?
Hi, I'm friends with William Rodriguez. He heard the explosions before the planes hit. His friend's skin was hanging off and he had come from the basement. This is a false flag operation. It was planned. I mean, it's too many coincidences. And this is my feeling.
It's 9/11, a very hard day for America, and especially hard for you. You were the janitor. You cleaned the stairways, 110 floors.
Yes.
Your office, sub-basement level 1. There are 6 sub-levels. So the lobby, then sub 1, sub 2, sub 3, sub 4, sub 5, subs. You were at sub 1. You punched in at 8:30 in the morning. You were late. You weren't going to go to work. It was a beautiful day. You were going to take off.
Correct.
You come into work because your boss asked you to. You came in. You were a little bit late. At 8:46, you heard an explosion from beneath you.
From below.
From below.
Yeah.
It was so big that it lifted you up.
Everybody in the office.
14 people.
14 people.
Lifted you up.
Correct.
A few seconds later, you heard another explosion.
Coming all the way from the top of the building.
Turned out that was the plane.
That was the plane.
The first plane.
Mm-hmm.
But there was definitely an explosion before the first plane.
Oh, 100% sure.
You have a lot of witnesses who were down there
Yes.
who would confirm that fact.
Yes.
You told that fact to the 9/11 Commission?
Not only did I tell the fact to the 9/11 Commission, but I gave them a list of the eyewitnesses that were there that experienced the same event as I did, and they were never called to testify.
And was your testimony included in the 9/11 report?
No, it doesn't show anywhere.
It doesn't
Actually,
show
it was
anywhere.
omitted. There's 576 pages on that book, and you won't find my name anywhere.
Anywhere. You go all over the world and you speak about what happened to you on that day, the fact that you had one of 5 pass keys that allowed you access to any and all doors in the complex?
That is correct, and I have a speech that I do all over the world as a motivation speech, but it always tells the real story of what happened on 9/11. And, like I said, there's a lot of respect all over the world for this kind of story, but when I come here, I am able to tell the story, but it's always either edited or presented in a different way. And only, I guess, C-SPAN had the only pants to actually put my story without editing for basically almost 2 hours.
For 2 hours?
For 2 hours, they let me tell my story. The only media network that allowed me full coverage.
I remember there was one interview that you were doing where you said, I heard a boom, and then they cut the footage.
That was ABC News. You can see it on Google.
Right, so what you said was, I heard an explosion from below. But as soon as you said explosion, they cut the tape and they made it into the plane.
In the plane, yes.
Yeah. You're not a conspiracy theorist, are you?
I don't.
You're a survivor.
I'm a survivor. I was there. I experienced the event. I was affected, and I'm still affected. It's 7 years. I'm still have open wounds, emotional open wounds. I have to go through this depression. argumentation and debate constantly with politicians fighting for victims' rights. It's just, I'm an activist, but at the same time, I'm a person that was affected by the worst event that we have ever experienced here in the United States. And I tell you, it's just not easy. It doesn't get any easier.
And you and the rest of the survivors, what you're calling for is a new and thorough investigation where all of the witnesses and survivors will be interviewed and it all will be included. Now, there's a man who you met on September 11th, Felipe David.
Felipe David.
He was on sub-level 2, beneath you, in his office, which is a small closet-sized office.
Right.
His job was to refill the vending machines. And you met him that day in 9/11
He was
because
totally burned.
he was burned.
He was totally burned.
He was beneath you.
He was beneath me, yeah.
No one on your level was burned,
No.
but he was beneath you. In level 2, he was completely burned
And there was-
from the waist up.
And there was other people as well that got stuck on the floor below us because of that explosion. They went into an elevator to protect themselves because of the fire and the debris and all the things happening at the
So
same
there was
time.
no fire on your level, sub 1, but
No.
there was fire, sub level 2.
There was no fire on the area where I was. I don't know if there was fire on the opposite side, but not on the area that I was. No, definitely no fire.
So Felipe came up to your level.
Came up to the level, came by the by the area of the office itself, with the hands extended, all the skin hanging, 33% of his body burnt, pieces missing from his face.
And you helped him out, you got him into an ambulance, you
I took
then
him
went
outside.
back in.
Correct.
You went back in 3 times.
Correct.
You're credited with saving over 100 people's lives.
Something like that.
Yes. You yourself were the last man out. You dove underneath the fire truck as the debris fell.
Correct.
And somehow
Correct.
you were able to get out?
I came out, I brought a person on a wheelchair named Ed Baye, and when I put him on the lobby with the 3 other firemen, I was told to get the ambulance ready. When I went to get the ambulance ready, the building started to collapse, and the only thing I saw was a fire truck. I sleep right under the fire truck, and the building collapsed right on top of me. I was the only one that survived at that moment because all that group of firemen and the man on the wheelchair died at that moment. I'm the last person to exit the building, last man out of the building.
So here we are 7 years later, 9/11, a horrible day in American history, and Willie Rodriguez, a hero, a friend of mine, there you go. He just wants to tell his story, and I don't know, 60 Minutes, 2020, NBC News, Dateline, somebody, tell this guy's story, because all I got is a blog. Peace out, everybody. September 11th.
The airplane struck the towers high above the ground. But down in the lobby of the North Tower, marble facing flew off the walls, the windows shattered, all the glass blown out.
Right away, a guy from the Port Authority told him the damage was somewhere above the 78th floor. But all you had to do was look around. It was obvious. Something had happened right there in the lobby.
You just saw that all the windows were blown out. The lobby looked like the plane hit the lobby.
Like the plane hit the lobby. What caused so much wreckage in the lobby?
What happened? We was in the explosion. We was in the lobby and the third explosion, the whole lobby collapsed on us.
What was it like? What was it like?
Horrible.
It's like hell. You don't want to know.
The whole building just collapsed on us inside the lobby.
Was that a secondary explosion?
Yes, it was.
That was the...
Yeah, definitely a secondary explosion. But we was inside waiting to go upstairs. And on the way upstairs, the whole fucking plane blew. And we just collapsed and everybody inside the lobby.
Similar to the first tower coming down, secondary?
I don't know about the first one, but I know the second it was terrible. Then there was a third one too after that one.
Third explosion after that?
That's right.
You were inside.
Everybody was inside the building waiting to go upstairs. And they just let loose. Everything just let loose inside the building.
So what you told me is that there was a plane or whatever hit the building, then a secondary explosion.
It was like 3 explosions after that. We came in after the fire. We came when the fire was going on already. We was in the staging area inside the building.
People don't understand. There may be more. Any one of these fucking buildings can blow up. This ain't done yet.
I only go into things I study. I've studied 9/11 for 3.5 years now. And it's my expert opinion. As a demolition expert, I was trained by the best the U.S. government has. I served 3 years on underwater demolition team 12, 2 years I was attached to SEAL Team 1. And when I look at the buildings and how they fall and the way they fell, they couldn't have come down without being assisted in some manner. And then when you look at the powder, if it collapsed, it would collapse in big chunks. Then I was at the site 2 weeks after it happened with Governor Pataki, right? And they had to cease digging that day. You know why? They were finding pockets of molten liquid metal underneath.
You'd get down below and you'd see molten steel running down the channel rails. Like you're in a foundry.
Yeah, like lava.
Like lava.
Why was there molten metal underneath?
You see how this debris is still smoking? That's from the fires that are still burning. 8 weeks later, we still got fires burning.
Steel-toed boots is one of the biggest things. Out still on the rubble, it's still, I believe, 1,100 degrees. The guy's boots just melt within a few hours.
I think the most damning evidence for me is, again, I'll bring it up, the thermitic residues found at ground zero. That's something that's really tough to explain away. And what it would suggest, I mean, did 19 guys with box cutters taking orders from a man hiding in a cave in Afghanistan really have access to the buildings, to wire them, to explode, and to come down the way that they did?
You have 210-story office buildings. You don't find a desk. You don't find a chair. You don't find a telephone, a computer. The biggest piece of a telephone I found was half of the keypad, and it was about this big. The building collapsed to dust.
All the cement is pulverized. It's not collapsed. It's blown to dust. Well, that takes huge energy. And if those buildings had truly collapsed, like they said, the debris would have been way, way more. You would have had debris piled up probably a third of the height.
When I first saw the buildings fall, I said, damn, it looks like Las Vegas. Looks like they're imploding some buildings. I've seen buildings imploded. I know I've seen planes that hit buildings. Planes don't knock down buildings. Fire doesn't burn down buildings. That building was blown up internally, and I'm not a smart guy, but I could see that.
Oh, you're a smart guy.
And I could see that both of them fell exactly symmetrically together as, you know, the dunes did in Vegas. I mean, I was watching all of that in the third building. Nothing happened to it, and it fell. I said, damn, you know, what's going on? And then the next thing I know, there's this big thing that this happened, and that happened when we knew that did not happen.
I mean, if you took a billiard ball and dropped at the height of the Twin Towers, and you just merely stopped it and started at every floor in free fall, it would take over a minute and a half to reach the ground. The buildings were down in 10 seconds.
There's only one way that that can happen. I mean, a building collapsing into the path of greatest resistance, into its own mass, but hitting the ground at the same time as a free-falling object, that means that there was mass moved out of the way. That means that the fall, something was accelerating that, something was helping that. The only way to do that is with bombs.
The job of the shape charge is to cut steel H-beams.
The way we do this is by cutting the beam at an angle, which, through a series of beams cut at the same angle, will tend to make the building shift over and walk.
These core columns were discovered after the collapse. The angled cut occurs in exactly the manner that shaped charges slice through steel beams to control the way they fall. Notice the hardened, once liquid metal. Was thermite used with the shaped charge?
We made it outside. We made it about a block.
We made it at least 2 blocks, and we started running. Floor by floor, it started popping out.
It was as if they had detonated.
Yeah,
as if they were planned to take down a building. Boom, 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 boom.
All the way down. I was watching it and running. Just ran up.
Had Hani Hanjour wanted to inflict maximum damage, all he had to do was nose down into the roof of the Pentagon. Instead, he begins a complicated 330-degree turn,
dropping 7,000 feet and exposing himself for an extra 3 minutes while executing a maneuver described by experienced pilots as nearly impossible. In essence, an amateur pilot who was unable to control a Cessna in August 2001 executed this nearly impossible maneuver in a 757 with skilled precision a month later. Flight controllers at Dulles International Airport were convinced that the plane was a military aircraft. The 757 allegedly descends over a Sheraton Hotel, Navy Annex, and Citgo gas station before crossing Washington Boulevard. 5 light poles are struck and knocked out of the ground. 1 reportedly strikes a taxi. Flight 77 manages to hit the only section which was reinforced to withstand a terrorist attack. Including reinforced steel and blast-resistant windows an 1.5 inches thick. So what was left of Flight 77? Not much. These pictures were taken before the roof of the Pentagon had collapsed. The Pentagon's outer wall had a hole approximately 20 feet in diameter on the first and second floor, and visible damage 90 feet across the first floor. A Boeing 757 is 155 feet long, 44 feet high, has a 124-foot wingspan and weighs almost 100 tons. And it disappeared into this hole without leaving any substantial wreckage on the outside. There is no visible damage from where the wings or vertical stabilizer would have hit the building. The engines of a 757 are 6 tons each, comprised of both steel and titanium. If they slammed into the building at 500 miles per hour, where are the imprints? Where are the engines themselves? The 757 appears to have completely disappeared into the building. There are numerous parts to a 757 that are virtually indestructible, marked with a specific serial number tied back to the plane. To date, we have not seen a single piece positively identified as Flight 77's. Additionally, there was no impact damage to the lawn, meaning Flight 77 managed to strike the Pentagon while remaining a few feet above the ground. And out of the videos that have been released, none of them clearly depict a Boeing 757. Also, an exit hole inside the Pentagon is not explained by any official report.
I've filmed before down at the Pentagon before 9/11. There's got to be at least 100 video cameras ringing that building, in the trees, everywhere. They've got that plane coming with 100 angles. How come we haven't seen the straight? I'm not talking about stop action photos, or I'm talking about the video. I want to see the video. I want to see 100 videos that exist of this. Why don't they want us to see that plane coming into the building? Because, you know, if you know anything about flying a plane, if you're going 500 miles an hour, if you're off by that much, you're in the river. So to hit a building that's only 5 stories high, that expertly, I believe that there will be answers in that videotape, and we should demand that that tape is
So the idea is that the hole is about 8 feet wide. And
yes, I'm not very good at the physics and all that, but I believe me, the questions need to be asked.
Well, I have a lot of questions about the Pentagon. I mean, I don't understand why we have so much footage of the World Trade Center and the sort of the buildings falling, the Twin Towers falling, and why there was also this whole thing that happened at the Pentagon, which, in a sense, if you hit the Pentagon, it's far more of a security breach if you're talking about national security. I mean, that is, in a sense, a lot worse. Of course, there's a lot of fatalities, a lot more with the towers, but the Pentagon is sort of glossed over, that we don't see a lot of information about that, and we don't even have a clear picture of the damage or what happened. And to me, that's troubling. Like, why is that so under the rug? Why are we not seeing anything about that? Why is it all focused on the towers? I mean, I understand that the tragedy has sort of the ground zero, that is sort of the ground zero of the tragedy, but there was other parts to it, too. That day was a terrible day, and there was other things that happened.
show us this incredible maneuvering. Just show it to us. Just show us, how this particular plane pulled off these maneuvers. What was it, a 270-degree turn at 500 miles an hour, descending 7,000 feet in 2.5 minutes, skimming across the treetops, the last 500 meters,
you can't
4 feet off the ground.
I have talked to pilots who've flown that very aircraft, that very type, and they say that at 500 and something miles an hour, you cannot fly that low to the ground.
Yeah, no, if that happened and there are that many cameras on it, I understand in the interest of national security that maybe not release the Pentagon cameras, but what about the Sheraton? What about the gas station? What about the Department of Transportation freeway cam? What about all these shots that had this thing perfectly documented? Instead, they put out 5 frames that they claim not to have authorized, correct?
And it doesn't look like a passenger liner. It looks like some type of small white aircraft or drone.
It's really suspicious. And then if you look in the lower left-hand corner at the date stamp, it's September 12th. It's just...
as usual, nothing they say fits. Nothing at any point. Everything they say turns out to be a fraud.
Yeah, but the whole thing about, the plane disintegrated and this and that. Now, I don't know what a Boeing, what that jet is going to do into a, reinforced limestone facade.
But it did disappear like the Wicked Witch when water hit her. It just all went into a 14-foot hole.
Exactly. But this whole thing about, even if you just take the one statement about the wings folding up, it seems like at that impact velocity, everything is still going the same speed.
Something's wrong. Something's absolutely wrong. A plane doesn't crash into the Pentagon and vaporize. It just doesn't. Okay? And why did they lay down all brand new ground out front? They destroyed the crime scene, the accident site. It was a plane crash there, and they completely resurfaced everything in a matter of a couple days. Why? Out of respect for the dead.
Just in the last few seconds, another building, building number 7, one of the buildings in support of the World Trade Center towers, has collapsed.
World Trade 7, functioning as the command center for the complex, housed giant diesel backup and oxygen systems, the mayor's protected emergency bunker, and offices for the CIA, Secret Service, Department of Defense, and Securities and Exchange Commission. Its other tenants were insurance companies, brokerages, and banks. No plane hit Building 7, but at 5:20 p.m. on September 11th, it collapsed in a heap on the ground. Some damage to Building 7 is said to have been caused by debris from Tower 1. Though this New York Times article tells us Building 7 burned like a giant torch, the only visuals that exist are of unidentified smoke and a few small fires. Compare this to the wallop sustained by World Trade Center 3, 4, 5, and 6. Positioned right below the towers, damage to the surrounding World Trade Center buildings was infinitely worse. Still, the structures held up. But somehow, rescue workers knew that Building 7 would fall.
You hear that? Keep your eye on that building. It'll be coming down soon.
They said, hey, you got to stay behind this line because they're thinking about taking this building down. They're not sure if it's stable or not. So they were holding a line off because they had knowledge that something was going to happen.
Okay, get out of here. All right? Go.
In this live BBC footage from September 11th, reporter Jane Stanley announces the collapse of Building 7 while it is still intact in the window behind her. How did BBC know this in advance of the event?
Jane, what more can you tell us about the Salomon Brothers building and its collapse?
Well, only really what you already know. Details are very, very sketchy. There's almost a sense downtown in New York behind me, down by the World Trade Centers, of just an area completely closed off as the rescue workers try to do their job. But this isn't the first building that has suffered as a result. We know that part of the Marriott Hotel next to the World Trade Center also collapsed as a result of this huge amount of falling debris from 110 floors of the two twin towers of the World Trade Center. As you can see behind me, the Trade Center appears to be still burning. We see these huge clouds of smoke and ash, and we know that behind that there's an empty piece of what was a very familiar New York skyline, a symbol of the financial prosperity of this city, but completely disappeared now, and New York is still unable to take on board what has happened to them today.
Presumably there were very few people in the Solomon building when it collapsed.
I would say 50 to 60% of Americans today don't even know that a third building went down. They have no idea that this third building went down at 5:20 in the afternoon, went down in 7 seconds flat, and wasn't struck by any airplane.
Right.
Well, when they, in their own document from NIST, that's the people that did the report, took 8 years or whatever, or 7 to get this out, they used the term free fall. That the building, it's in their words, in the document, you'll see it went into a free fall. Well, I got news for you. I used to blow things up for a living. And there's also something called physics, the law of gravity, which you might not like it, but you can't deny it. Free fall can only happen when all resistance is removed, because a moving object that runs into one not moving is going to slow down. That's the law of physics. When they say it went into total free fall, means there was no slowdown, which means there's only one way to remove the resistance. The buildings were demoed, or that building was for sure, right in their own documents. How can they, and yet, where's our media? Where's the mainstream media? Well, they're busy attacking me.
There's one document that suggests that Tower 7 fell down faster than it could have fallen down just by natural.
It doesn't suggest it, it says it. It said it fell at, if NIST report said it fell at free fall.
So then you make the
wait a minute. That means you got to defy the laws of physics. That means everything was removed, in which for anything to fall at free fall
speed. But then you make
speed.
that leap then to the idea that it was demolished by explosives inside by the government.
I don't make a leap. Why didn't they check for explosives? They never did, if not to eliminate them. They didn't do that.
Tower 7 disturbs me the most. I look at Towers 1 and 2 and I go, well, they got hit by planes, you know, and look at the fire and everything. Maybe it broke. Maybe everyone's being crazy. But that Tower 7 just went whoosh, just like a controlled demolition. And everybody's like, yeah, but it had holes in the building, and you see the hole in the building. Yes, I see the hole in the building, but wouldn't it fall towards that hole? Why is it falling like that?
I do believe that it defies physics for the World Trade Center Tower 7, Building 7, which collapsed in on itself. It is impossible for a building to fall the way it fell without explosives being involved. World Trade Center 7. World Trader 1 and 2 got hit by planes. 7, miraculously, the first time in history, steel was melted by fire. It is physically impossible.
And who do you think is responsible for that?
I have no idea. But to say that we don't know that it imploded and it was an implosion and a demolition is beyond ignorant. Look at the films, get a physics expert here from Yale, from Harvard, pick the school. It defies reason.
Let's get one. Let's get one.
The way Tower 7 fell, it just kinked in the middle and fell down free fall speed. Almost. I mean, everybody they'll nitpick at you. Oh, it was 1/10 of a second slower than free fall.
No. NIST has had to go back now and admitted, okay, there was free fall in the first 10 floors.
Well, even if it was just close to free fall, that's crazy. There was no resistance. It just gave up. Why wouldn't it wiggle and collapse towards where it got jacked? It just seems like a controlled demolition.
Yeah, and then you've got Silverstein, the leaseholder, the owner of 7 as well as the rest of the complex, right? On tape, on the record, saying, we've had such a terrible loss of life that day, and I made the decision that they should go ahead and pull it.
And we gave the order and watched the building come down.
Yeah. Well, pull is that's That's just coming to the demo world as action and cut to the movie world.
Here is Larry Silverstein, the owner, who took out $7 billion of insurance on the two towers, and he's also now bought the Sears Tower and taken out a bunch of insurance. And Governor Pataki just called him the lowest of the low in the newspaper because he's holding out for $1 billion more now. Interesting fellow, made out quite well, and here is his statement from America Rebuilds.
I remember getting a call from the fire department commander telling me that they were not sure they were going to be able to contain the fire. And I said, you know, we've had such terrible loss of life. Maybe the smartest thing to do is pull it. And they made that decision to pull, and then we watched the building collapse.
Oh, we decided to pull it. Thank you, Larry Silverstein. Who's we? And when you decided to pull it, how soon afterwards was it down? So you must have pre-rigged it?
The owner said that, yeah, we all agreed to pull the building, and then they're trying to say that in demolition terms, pulling it doesn't mean exploding it now. You know, they always come back after the fact and say, well, no, what they meant was something else. When we meant pull the building, it meant we were going to evacuate it. Well, I've never ever heard the term pull a building meaning to evacuate it out of people. That's a new term to me.
Blast, shoot, blow, and pull are terms used in the demolition industry to refer to bringing down buildings, bridges, and other structures.
Because I actually blew the hospital down that I was born in.
Originally, we had figured to shoot it, let it drop straight down.
Then, watch Demolition Dynamics attempt a big blast.
And from Ground Zero's own post-disaster wrecking crew.
By mid-December, the Department of Design and Construction had leveled World Trade Center buildings 4 and 5.
Hello? Oh, we're getting ready to pull building 6.
There was a lot of questions about it. My son Charlie introduced me to a lot of information, questions and so forth. And up until then, which was just like last year, I was very dubious. But I did not want to believe that my government could possibly be involved in such a thing.
Absolutely, I don't think any of us want to.
I couldn't live in a country that I thought could do that.
Exactly.
That would be the ultimate betrayal.
Sure.
Then, however, there's been so many revelations that now I have my doubts. And chief among them is the Building 7. How did they rig that building so that it came down on the evening of the day?
Are you referring to the Larry Silverstein statement to pull it and the way that it all came down? Absolutely.
How convenient.
Yes.
When did they rig that building?
Let me just play devil's advocate for a second, right? Again, I don't claim to be an expert about structural integrity. I don't claim to be an expert about demolitions. Could they have rigged that building during the day when they decided that the fire was out of hand, even though it was only in a couple of floors?
No way. They could have blown the whole thing to bits with just a massive explosives down low, but they couldn't engage in precision demolitions. It would take weeks.
Okay, good. Good to know. That's what I think. But again, I'm just throwing stuff out that somebody might present as a viable argument.
Keep your eye on that building. It'll be coming down.
About to blow up. Move it back.
Rescue workers pushed people away from the scene.
We are walking back. There's a building about to blow up.
You know, again, I've read about all that. Now you get a chance to hear it. You know, and again, clearly they knew the building was coming down ahead of time. And, you know, you look at the 9/11 Commission, they didn't even address Building 7. There isn't one word in their entire report.
Not one word in the 9/11 Commission report about the collapse of Building 7. As a matter of fact, during court proceedings dealing with the NYC Can petition, I believe the judge who is presiding over the matter, his name is Judge Lerner, when Building 7 was brought up in the courtroom, he said, building what? He didn't even know what Building 7 was or how it related to 9/11. I'm not sure if he knew that it collapsed that day. Now, you know, any report or investigation that purports to be a full accounting of the events surrounding the day and on the day of 9/11 should clearly have addressed at least a couple paragraphs to the collapse of Building 7. But there was no message.
Yeah, here's one of the guys who can tell you I'm okay, all right? Here, hold on. You want to call your mother or something?
You gotta get back.
I know that. You gotta get back. All right? Don't worry about me. You need to make calls right now.
Should have taken a couple of companies that they were leaving back to us. They were stuck in the tunnel. So that's, you know, they must be
statements. Well, at first we had thought, Brian, that we'd heard another explosion, but I think it's just another truck that's heading down to the south. But I just wanted to let you know that we're starting to see people moving north. In fact, you were just told by police that you should move out of your apartment, Fabiana. You've got Carolina here?
Yes. They advised us to leave because we have...
Oh, my God. Look behind us. Please pan in this way. Please be careful of your baby. This is it.
That's the building coming down.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God. Oh, my God. No. No. Listen. We'll be all right. We'll be all right.
We're okay. Ashley! I think we're okay. Ashley, I think we're okay.
All right, we're going to have to move this way. We're going to have to move. We're going to have to move. That cloud is coming this way.
Yeah. Ashley, get out of there. Leave the camera unmanned if you need to, and get out of there. What we've been fearing all afternoon has apparently happened. We were watching number 7 World Trade, which was part of the ancillary damage of the explosion and collapse of the other 2. We've been talking all day about how fast these plumes of smoke move. You're watching one on the move right now. That is building dust. Look at the wider shot on the left from across the river in New York. This was a 40-story building. They've been watching all day. This is like watching the collapse of an active volcano. And the dust from it is not unlike that from a volcano. We are on the phone with New York Fire Department Lieutenant David Restuccio. Lieutenant, where are you right now?
I'm at the corner of Northmore Street and Greenwich Street.
Can you confirm it was number 7 that just went in?
Yes, sir.
And you guys knew this was coming all day?
We had heard reports that the building was unstable and that it eventually would either come down on its own or it would be taken down. And that it eventually would either come down on its own or it would be taken down. Or it would be taken down.
World Trade Center 7 was brought down on September 11th at 5:20 in the evening. The leaseholder of the World Trade Center complex, Larry Silverstein, gave a public interview on PBS in 2002, and he said that they pulled that building, which is a demolition term for intentionally bringing down a building. This man made over $5 billion from those buildings' destruction. And I want to know if there was ever a formal investigation into Larry Silverstein, the leaseholder of the World Trade Center complex, and his ties to this entire event.
I don't believe there's been a formal investigation. I haven't heard that. I don't know that. I do know that that wall, I remember, was in danger, and I think that they made a decision based on the danger that it had of destroying other things, that they did it in a controlled fashion.
On the evening of March 6, 1975, more than 11 years after the assassination of JFK, the Zapruder film was aired on Goodnight America. For the first time ever, millions of Americans saw with their own eyes the brutal tragedy that had unfolded a decade earlier on a sunny afternoon in Dallas. The image of the president's body being thrust backward proved in a split second the fatal shot came from in front of the motorcade. In an instant, refuting a fairy tale that had prevailed for more than a decade. A few seconds of footage changed the way a people thought about the event of their generation, and public outcry led to a new congressional investigation. It is now September 2010. 9 years have passed since the 9/11 attacks, and Building 7 has been hidden from public view because it is the Zapruder film of 9/11. A body being thrust backwards. A skyscraper coming down in freefall.
Certain images speak for themselves because they speak in the language of common sense.
The thing that I can't get my mind off of is that if there's a problem with Building 7, there's a problem with the whole thing. If there's a problem with Building 7, there's a problem with the whole thing.
I think that at least the Bush administration knew that there was going to be some kind of attack on America, because due to the presidential daily briefing that apparently everyone read but didn't react to. And I think they perhaps chose to look the other way or stand down to gain entry, to get attacked and basically green light their agenda that we're enacting now. Because if you look at America's history, if you think about Pearl Harbor or Vietnam War, the Gulf of Tonkin, you see that we kind of sometimes egg our way into wars because war makes money. I think America exists on a war economy. The economy is the war, and I really believe that.
Having been a frogman and a Navy SEAL, I know what it's like to be in a position where failure is not an option. And in the case of our air national defense, failure is not an option. And on 9/11, they thoroughly failed. And here's my point. Why was nobody fired? Why did no one lose their job over the catastrophic failure of 9/11 if it's indeed what they told us it was?
What struck me immediately, my father was director of air commerce under Franklin Roosevelt. My father, who was been one of the original Army Air Force flyers in World War I, he had put in a lot of sort of safety things. In the event of a hijacking of a passenger liner or any plane that they knew about, that fighter planes would be scrambled, that is, sent up into air immediately within minutes in order to force the plane down, to change course, shoot it down if you had to. And you don't need orders from the president, the vice president, or anybody else. That's the law. Well, they didn't go up after 9/11. Everybody knew what had happened, and the planes were still on their way to Washington to hit the Pentagon, when suddenly from Otis Air Base comes one fighter plane. Otis Air Base is in Massachusetts. Might just as well have been in Canada. That was the only fighter plane which, according to law, they all should have been up there, and not one went up. Well, that could only happen if somebody had told them to stand down, not to respond to what was, after all, their sworn duty.
Where were our jets? Where was our air defense that day when 4 individual airliners could be hijacked in a 2 or 3 hour period and we had nothing up there to stop them? Well, this book will show you there was a stand down order that was done June 1st of 2001. Before that, it was left up to base commanders. They could make the call. If the FAA said we got a plane in trouble, they could scramble jets. But when this document came out, they weren't allowed to do that anymore. It required approval from the Department of Defense, the DOD. And remember, they couldn't find Rumsfeld for a couple of hours. So all it took was Don Rumsfeld not to answer the phone, and you had a stand down, which is what we had. I guess the apologists for the government or the people that think I'm crazy say that's just circumstance. It just happened that way. Well, in the words of L. Fletcher Prouty, Colonel Prouty, he always said nothing just happens, everything is planned.
I'm gonna miss you, Major. You aren't ready to stay dead. You don't know the rules of the game anymore.
Tell me about it. 8 years ago, this guy was on a hit list.
Budget cuts, dear. Congress blinded us overseas. I was forced to turn to any eyes and ears I could find, even if that meant recruiting the quote-unquote bad guys here.
Budget cuts? Is that what this is about? Operation Honeymoon. Fuck me. You're running a fundraiser.
Fundraiser? 1993. World Trade Center bombing, remember? During the trial, one of the bombers claimed the CIA had advanced knowledge. The diplomat who issued the terrorist visa was CIA. It's not unthinkable they paved the way for the bombing. purely to justify a budget increase.
You're telling me that you're gonna fake some terrorist thing just to get some money out of Congress?
Well, unfortunately, Mr. Hennessy, I've no idea how to fake killing 4,000 people. So we're just gonna have to do it for real. Oh, blame it on the Muslims, naturally. Then I get my funding. Good night, old girl.
Maybe we'll put these terrorists in jail. But others will come here and take their place. I mean, that's what this country's all about, isn't it? Land of opportunity. Now we can't build a bubble around it.
John, let's get back to what we were talking about.
We can throw more agents at it, put more funding on it, but when push comes to shove, it's just so easy. This isn't over.
Next time we'll bring them both down. Next time we'll bring them both down.
You said they intend to bring us down in the middle of New York City? What if there is no bomb?
Well, how are they gonna bring it down?
The same way a dead man can drive a car.
What do you mean, no bomb?
Langley, I need you to hack into the aircraft's onboard navigation system. We need to know where we're headed.
Okay, go into headsets. I'll clone the airphone's carrier. Make them think we're sending a ground air fax.
That's one twisted Star 69.
I'll just get ready to ride the wave, hippie boy.
Just get me on that plane and I'll get you autopilot access.
How are you going to do that?
Airline telemetry systems use processors similar to those found in CB radios.
I'm in. We got ourselves a convoy.
What's your progress?
I've hacked into the flight control system output.
With a little bit of help.
It's what the brains of the plane is telling the little black box.
Course, heading, attitude, hold, yaw, axis, stabilization. What the heck's that?
Is that what it looks like?
I think it is what it looks like.
What does what look like?
Modem protocols. Remote access. Somebody on the ground's flying your plane.
Bogey, sir.
Keep your course. We need to know our flight plan.
I'm mapping the data now.
Byers, your flight's gonna make an unscheduled stop in exactly 22 minutes.
The corner of Liberty and Washington. Lower Manhattan.
World Trade Center. We're going to crash the plane into the World Trade Center.
I'll tell the flight crew.
Langley, can you override the flight control system?
I'm working on it.
What is this? My name is Bert Byers. I work for the government. I believe this plane has been commandeered.
Sir, passengers are not allowed in the cockpit. I need you to return to your seat now.
You don't have control of this plane, and I don't know if we can get it back. Turn off your autopilot. There may be a chance that we can override it.
Sir, I'll be happy to contact your superiors in the government to confirm. Sir, damn it!
He's right. New York Center, this is Atlantic National Flight 265 Heavy. We are declaring an emergency. We have 110 souls on board, 16,000 pounds of fuel, and no dangerous goods or cargo to report. Come on, Bro Hickey.
The fronts have failed, haven't
There's still hope.
Hope my next turnout's as nice as my last one.
Got manual override.
don't know, I was an actor on The X-Files for 9 seasons, 10 years, plus our own spin-off, The Lone Gunman. I'm the one that looked like Garth from Wayne's World. Thank you very much for everyone who sent the buttons. Yeah, I had the long blonde hair, the horn-rimmed glasses, and the rock T-shirts with the Ramones and all that sort of thing.
Your pilot episode, tell us about that plot.
Yeah, absolutely. This was a pilot episode for The Lone Gunman, where the basic plot was the gunman had to stop a plane from flying into the World Trade Center 8 months before it actually happened. So when we got the script, it said, plane, World Trade Center. They filmed an entire airplane. They had a green matte screen, so they put the shot of the New York skyline in with the plane flying directly at it. And just seconds before we get computer control, we get it back to the pilots, and the pilots can pull the plane up and avoid hitting the World Trade Center. And part of that plot was that, as it said in the script, that this was to start an international war on terror. That this was, the Cold War's over, and that for the arms race to continue and keep the economy going, that they would start an international war on terror by flying the plane into the World Trade Center.
In fact, I want to play that clip from The Lone Gunman right now. Go ahead and roll that clip where they're describing why this terrorist event is going to take place. You have kind of the boss of the conspiracy theorists talking to his father who's in the government.
Right.
And so they're talking. Go ahead and roll that.
What is scenario 12D? We know it's a war game scenario, that it has to do with airline counterterrorism. Why is that important enough to kill for?
Because it's no longer a game.
If some terrorist group wants to act out this scenario, why target you for assassination?
Depends on who your terrorists are.
The men who conceived of it in the first place. You're saying our government plans to commit a terrorist act against a domestic airline?
There you go. Indicting the entire government as usual. It's a faction. A small faction.
For what possible gain?
The Cold War's over, John. But with no clear enemy to stockpile against, the arms market's flat. But bring down a fully loaded 727 into the middle of New York City, and you'll find a dozen tin pot dictators all over the world just clamoring to take responsibility and begging to be smart bombed.
I can't believe it. This is about increasing arms sales.
Mm-hmm.
When?
Tonight?
Now, we shot that in March of 2000. So that script was written probably around January, February 2000. And then that aired, that would have been September, I think, or maybe even January 2001, because it was a mid-season replacement. And then September 2001 it happened. And I didn't even put it together. It was the writers who actually called me in the afternoon going, "Are you watching this?" And I'm going, "Well, why are the writers from the X-Files calling me?"
You've been fixing your sink, right?
Yeah, exactly. You remember that. Yeah, I got my sink went. I was at Home Depot. I had like other issues than watching the TV all day. And then suddenly it all gelled together all at once.
That's kind of good that we're so unplugged from mainstream media that you didn't even know it was happening.
I heard about it.
I knew it like right when it happened. Well, sure, no, so they called you. But I mean, you hadn't gotten all the details, I understand.
Yeah. Chris Carter tells a story, and I met the psychic who was hired by the CIA just to hang out at Hollywood parties and then go back and drop emails about what she talked about. And this was the CIA keeping tabs on producers and writers of Hollywood movies because that's the...
Because the psychic with them's like their psychologist. These people spill their guts.
They spill their guts. And she went up to Chris Carter, who was at a party way in the back. She said, "Whatever you're working on is going to make you millions of dollars." And this was before he had launched the X-Files. And he actually told that same story, collaborated.
Now, also, you guys talk about the CIA, NASA, others planting ideas and scripts. And I mean, come on. This is exactly what happened on 9/11. There is a government drill, actually 5 drills going on, of flying planes into the very buildings.
Yep.
And now that's USA Today, folks. We told you that from our sources 2.5 years before it was in USA Today. Now it's admitted.
Yeah.
Okay? But we have this from our sources. Now it's admitted they have this drill. In the Lone Gunman pilot episode, this criminal group of the government is going to use a drill to make the rest of the government stand down, and they're going to fly it into there to attack Afghanistan, to smart bomb the tin horn dictators. I mean, you cannot
get any closer.
I know. And then to say, oh, we had no indication that this would ever happen. This was like the government's position. There was no information that this would happen. It was everywhere. It was in your popular media. It's in your books, you know.
Specifically, were you able to talk to Chris Carter and others? I mean, was that storyline planted on them? Where did they get that?
They said they got it from a Tom Clancy novel. I forget which one.
Which it's admitted that Tom does get that from the intelligence agency.
So it probably was then second or third hand. But
there's a drill to make everybody stand down, but his book doesn't do that. That part was added. I mean, I tell you, the mathematical chance of that happening.
We're doing a documentary called The Truth Is Out There. Okay. We are all following all sorts of not just conspiracies, but different movements. We were on the Alex Jones show last week, Dr. Stan yesterday. So we're bringing it all together. It's how truth functions in our society and everybody involved. So it's a cool project.
How is Hollywood receiving you?
How is Hollywood receiving me?
Yeah.
I'm still here. Yeah.
Growing within the Hollywood community?
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's a huge movement. But like everybody, they're just like, my agent told me not to say anything. So, you know, they're the last to jump on board. Unless you don't give a shit. Then, you know, that's me. So, yeah, well, it's more, you know, they're worried about a paycheck, that's all. Everybody's got a mortgage. I know.
The American people are living in a matrix. They don't understand the truth of how things are working in this country, you know. And let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. I had a friend, Nick Rockefeller, okay, who was one of the Rockefeller family, and he, when I was running for governor in Nevada, he came to me, introduced himself to me through an attorney, and we became friends. We started talking about things, and I learned an awful lot from Mr. Rockefeller. I met Rockefeller through a female attorney I knew who called me up one day and said, one of the Rockefellers would like to meet you. I had made a video called Mad as Hell, and he'd seen the video and wanted to meet me and knew I was running for governor of Nevada. So sure, I'd love to meet him. And I met him and I liked him, and he was a very, very smart man. And we used to talk and share ideas and thoughts. And he's the one who told me 11 months before 9/11 ever happened that there was going to be an event. Never told me what the event was going to be, but there was going to be an event, and out of that event, we were going to invade Afghanistan to run pipelines from the Caspian Sea. We were going to invade Iraq, you know, to take over the oil fields, establish a base in the Middle East, and make it all part of the New World Order. And we go after Chavez in Venezuela. And sure enough, later 9/11 happened, and I remember he was telling me how how you're gonna see soldiers looking in caves for people in Afghanistan and Pakistan and all these places, and there's gonna be this war on terror, which is no real enemy, and the whole thing is a giant hoax, you know, but it's a way for the government to take over the American people.
He told you it was going to be a hoax.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, there's no question. He says, there's going to be war on terror, and he's just laughing. There's no, who are we fighting? I mean, why do you think 9/11 happened, and then nothing's happened since then? Do you think that our security is so great here that these people who pulled off 9/11, who were able to, can't knock down another plane? Come on, it's ridiculous. 9/11 was done by people in our own government and our own banking system to perpetuate the fear of the American people into subordinating themselves to anything the government wants them to do. That's what it's about, and to create this war, this endless war on terror. And that's why and that was the first lie. And the next lie was going into Iraq, you know, to get Saddam Hussein out with his weapons of mass destruction. That was the next lie.
Now, specifically, this was a little over 6 years ago?
This was
11 months before 9/11.
Yeah.
And Nick Rockefeller, who's a lawyer, he's become your friend over the previous years, and he's saying to you that there's going to be this big event, and then out of that we're going to have a war on terror, and it's just going to go on and on.
Right. An endless war on terror without any real enemy. That you can never, so you can never define a winner.
And did he say that it's going to be perfect because you can't define an enemy? It just goes
Yeah,
on?
because you can't define a winner. There's no one to beat, so it goes on and on forever. And they can do whatever they want. They scared the hell out of the American public. Look, this whole war on terror is a fraud. It's a farce. It's very difficult to say it out loud because people are intimidated against saying it. Because if you say it, they want to make you into a nutcase. But the truth has to come out. That's why I'm doing this interview. The fact of the matter happens to be that the whole war on terror is a fraud. It's a farce. Yeah, there's a war going on in Iraq because we invaded Iraq. And people over there fighting, you know. But the war on terror, that's a joke, you know. And until we discover what really happened on 9/11 and who was responsible for 9/11, because that's where the war on terror emanates from. That's where it comes from. It was 9/11 that allowed this war on terror to begin. And until we get to the bottom root of 9/11, the truth of 9/11, we'll never know about the war on terror.
Segment tonight, we continue our look at the far left vis-a-vis 9/11. Listen to actor Charlie Sheen.
Good afternoon, Mr. President. I come to you today representing the families of the victims of September 11th, as well as millions of my fellow Americans. Hopefully by now you've had a chance to read my letter to you, 20 Minutes with the President, and if not, at least had its contents brought to your attention. We have questions, Mr. President. Lots of questions. A lot of them are detailed in my letter, but trust me, there are hundreds of more questions. As my letter chronicles, sir, the 9/11 Commission itself says they were lied to, deceived, and essentially prevented from carrying out a real investigation. People of the United States and the world demand the truth, sir.
We have to continuously ask questions. That's what a patriot does. That's what a true American does. We ask questions.
You, sir, have the power as well as the responsibility to initiate a truly independent congressional investigation into the events of 9/11 as well as its aftermath. We want our country back, Mr. President. Therefore, I'm not just calling on you and your team. I am calling on each and every American citizen to wake up, stand up, and demand the truth. We're counting on you, Mr. President. Be on the right side of history.
Charlie Sheen penned a letter to President Obama called 20 Minutes with the President, where he essentially asks for 20 minutes with President Obama to ask him questions on behalf of the victims' family members regarding 9/11, unanswered questions. And he has 20 bullet points in this letter to President Obama, and each one of these bullet points is supported in a bibliography that contains relatively uncontroversial news sources.
There is a contest that is directly related to 20 Minutes with the President, and what we are requesting is that any man, woman, or child, regardless of race, sit down and put on video two characters actually reading 20 Minutes with the President. Somebody plays me, somebody plays the President. And what Alex and I are going to do is we're going to take all the video submissions. If you want to read the whole thing, if you want to read a portion of it, if you want to do, however you interpret it, whatever language you interpret it in, we're going to take those video submissions, and Alex and I are going to decide on who the winner is.
I wrote this letter for two reasons. Firstly, I wanted to create a public document specifically rooted in fact. If anybody dares question that, I would encourage those people to scrutinize it, to research it. The truth is unchanging, Alex, as we both know. The only aspect of this piece that had to be manufactured were the president's words. Everything else will withstand the critical assault I'm more than prepared to endure. And secondly, this is our first new president since 9/11, and consequently his first 9/11 anniversary in office. Enough stonewalling, enough media manipulation, enough media mantra speak. The families deserve better, Alex. America deserves better. I mean, come on. Come on, people. The 9/11 Commission report is a blatant work of manipulation, secrecy, and fiction. Come on, the time is now. Demand the truth. I personally cannot stand idly by any longer and pretend like a new investigation is just going to fall out of the heavens right into our Congress. We have to take action. We have to stand as one. We must insist that our new president deliver on his promises. And that's why, Alex, that's why I've gone right to the top with this. That's why I'm asking the president to read my letter, to answer my questions in person, and to call for a real and open investigation, finally.
We just experienced our first 9/11 anniversary with you as Commander-in-Chief.
Yes, a very solemn day for our nation.
Now, am I to understand, sir, that you fully support and endorse the findings of the Commission report, otherwise known as the official story?
Do I have any reason not to?
Are you aware, Mr. President, of the recent stunning revelations that 60% of the 9/11 commissioners have publicly stated that the government agreed not to tell the truth about 9/11, and that the Pentagon was engaged in deliberate deception about the response to the attack?
I am aware of certain infighting during the course of a very thorough, long investigative process.
Mr. President, it's hard to label this type of friction as infighting or make the leap to thorough when the evidence I insist that you examine is statement of fact. If you'll notice, Mr. President, on page 1 of the dossier, dated August of '06, from the Washington Post, the statements of John Farmer, who is the former senior counsel to the 9/11 commissions. His statement, I was shocked how different the truth was from the way it was described, as well as the statements of Commissioner Max Cleland, an ex-senator from Georgia, who resigned stating, it is a national scandal. This investigation is now compromised, but this White House wants to cover it up.
Mistakes were clearly made, but we as a people and a country have to move on.
Sir, how can we focus on the future when the commission itself is on record stating that they still do not know the truth about 9/11, and in fact it has been the pretext for the systematic dismantling of our Constitution and the Bill of Rights? Sir, with all due respect, your administration is reading from the exact same playbook as the Bush administration.
And I'm telling you that we must move forward.
For 26 years, more than half of my life, I have been creating fiction for a living. So believe me when I tell you, I recognize it when it presents itself, and even more so when it is forced into my grill. So on that note, Alex, I'm no longer afraid to say that the official 9/11 story is an absolute fairy tale, a complete work of fiction, and not even a very good one. If the president ignores this, that's on him. If he accepts it, that's on me.
Charlie, your letter to the president closes by you saying to him, make sure you're on the right side of history. What did you mean by that?
What I meant by that, Alex, was that this is his chance to do the right thing. And for much too long now, our government has been on the wrong side of history.
And finally, Mr. President, number 10. On April 29th, 2004, President Bush and Vice President Cheney would only meet with the commission under specific clandestine conditions. They insisted on testifying together and not under oath, and to this date, nothing they spoke of that day exists in the public domain.
Mr. President, that's all the time we have for Hollywood today.
Thank you. Well, Charlie, I can't say this hasn't been interesting.
Mr. President, you're on the right side of history.
I am on the right side. Thank you very much. My aides and I will be in touch.
Geraldo Rivera called him, again, came out and called him crazy. There's somebody on Fox and Friends whose name I can't remember, Gutfeld or something like that, who called him a Nazi.
Sheen claims that 9/11 was the pretext for systematic dismantling of our Constitution. He says this without realizing that since 9/11, not a single person has shut him up. His relentless babble has done more to prove there's no cover-up than anything ever. Damn, I wish the government would silence him or at least give him a better haircut suited for a middle-aged man. It's strange, I tell you. But look, I love Sheen because he's a man unencumbered by self-awareness. Think about it. The man's, he's the world's most clueless, druggy, gambling-addicted whore banger, and he thinks he's uncovered a conspiracy and that we should all believe him. How cute is that? And if you disagree with me, then you're probably a racist.
You know, all kinds of ad hominem responses to a fact-based argument. And that, I think, is very telling. I think it means that somebody does not want to address the subject of 9/11 based upon the facts at hand. They want to respond with character assassination and personal insults. You know, on The View, which is not really the news, Meghan McCain responded to Charlie Sheen's 20 Minutes with the President initiative by saying, are you really going to take your political cues from an actor? Clearly not remembering that Ronald Reagan was president of the United States and Arnold Schwarzenegger is governor of the state of California, so that's not really a very substantive rebuttal to the questions that Charlie has raised either.
So tomorrow is the 8th anniversary of the September 11th terrorist attacks, and the conspiracy theories are as strong as ever. There are internet sites, movies, and celebrities who are convinced that the U.S. government was complicit in the attacks. Is this ever going to change? I mean, conspiracy theories have always been around, but this seems a little much.
It is so I was going to say unbelievable, but the thing is that people believe it. Why? Why that need?
Well, I mean, why that need in any of this? Because we have the Holocaust deniers, the people who say that that never happened. I mean, it's insane when you have all this documentation of all of these incidents to continuously say, no, none of it happened.
And Charlie Sheen recently is the latest celebrity to talk about how he doesn't believe in 9/11. I quoted Charlie Sheen yesterday about his experience with prostitutes. So really, you're the one that I should be listening to about 9/11.
Prostitutes and still do politics, though, can't you? As it's been proven.
He was a good politician. I'm not going to take my political advice from Charlie Sheen.
Specifically talking about media.
Sure.
There was one particular show, The View, and you've got a challenge for somebody.
Yes, I do, Alex. Meghan McCain, John McCain's daughter, I guess, was on The View. I don't watch the shows, but I only I read the transcript, and she had some pretty, uneducated, uninformed comments about my piece, or about me personally. She wasn't even talking about the piece. I've just got to believe, Alex, that if I was sitting right next to her, that her tune would have been a lot different. But if she's such an expert on me, first of all, and on the event, secondly, I would welcome her to an open debate. Just pick the time and the place, and I'll be there early. And she better pack a lunch because it's going to take some time.
Charlie, specifically, I was talking to you during the break. You want to issue the challenge. Go ahead.
Let's do it. I issued the challenge to debate Meghan McCain, Rush Limbaugh, Sean Hannity, Bill O'Reilly. Bring them all. Bob McElmain and I will join you on Larry King Live. And you guys bring whatever you got. Bring Popular Mechanics. Let's call them out as well. And we'll show up with the truth, and we'll just see how it goes. We're not hiding. We're not hiding.
In America, we are fed propaganda, and if you want to know what's happening in the world, go outside of the U.S. media, because it's owned by 4 corporations. One of them is this one. And you know what? Go outside of the country to find out what's going on in our own country, because it's frightening. It's frightening.
I come to you today representing the families of the victims of September 11th, as well as millions of my fellow Americans. We have questions, Mr. President. Lots of questions.
Now, is Charlie Sheen ranting like a lunatic about the September 11th attack?
Charlie's one of those charming guys, like Rosie O'Donnell, who had similar views. I think that they have swallowed this Kool-Aid. They are hurting the victims' families. I think that he has a trick gene or a screw loose.
Many of these 9/11 truthers, who I've been telling you for years, are dangerous. You know, it took me about a year to start hating the 9/11 victims' families. It took me about a year. And I had such compassion for them, and I really, you know, I wanted to help them, and I was behind, you know, let's give them money, let's get started, you know, all of this stuff. And I really didn't, you know, all the 3,000 victims' families, I don't hate all of them. I hate probably about 10 of them. But when I see, you know, 9/11 victim family, you know, on television or whatever, I'm just like, oh, shut up. I'm so sick of them because they're always complaining, and we did our best for them. And again, it's only about 10. There's about 10 of them that are spoiling it for everybody.
There are people out there that I think are dangerous that actually believe that 9/11 was an inside job and that George Bush was responsible for wiring it up and blowing up the World Trade Center. I think some of those people are nuts. I think some of them are dangerous.
In the personal story segment tonight, we were surprised to find out that an American who lost his father in the World Trade Center attack had signed an anti-war advertisement that accused the USA itself of terrorism.
Jeremy Glick is the son of a Port Authority worker who died at 9/11, and he had signed an anti-war petition, and O'Reilly had to have him on.
And they were so persistent about getting me on the O'Reilly show because they found out that I was on the advisory board and signed a statement that was against the war, and then I was directly impacted by 9/11. The success that I had on the O'Reilly show had to do with just practice and preparation. I taped the shows, and what I did is I took a stopwatch that I used to use for running sprints in high school, and I would see when he has a hostile guest, and I would time how long it takes for him to cut them off.
I was surprised. And the reason I was surprised is that this ad equates the United States with the terrorists.
I said, I'm shocked that you're surprised, and basically just made the only point I wanted to make. Our current president now inherited a legacy from his father and inherited a political legacy that's responsible for training militarily, economically, and situating geopolitically the parties involved in the alleged assassination and murder of my father and countless of thousands of others. So I don't see why it's so surprising for you to think that I would come back and want to support.
It is surprising, and I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why it's surprising. You are mouthing a far-left position.
It was extremely intimidating sitting down in the studio because he's really tall. And like, dude, like he lords over you.
You see, I'm sure your beliefs are sincere, but what upsets me is I don't think your father would be approving of this.
Well, actually, my father thought that Bush's presidency was illegitimate.
Maybe he did, but I don't think he'd be equating this country as a terrorist nation.
Well, I wasn't saying that it was necessarily like that.
You
what
signed
I'm saying
this and it absolutely said that.
Jeremy was pretty cool during it, and he was giving his political views, which were very to the left of O'Reilly's.
And he said, oh, I don't really care what you think politically. And I said, obviously you do care, because A, you brought me on the show, and B, I told him that he uses 9/11 and sympathy with the 9/11 families and the lives lost to rationalize his narrow right-wing agenda. You evoke sympathy with the 9/11 families.
That's a bunch of crap.
So
I've done more for the 9/11 families, by their own admission. I've done more for them than you will ever hope to do. Okay. So you keep your mouth shut when you see me exploiting those people.
You're
I
not
don't.
representing
And I never represent you. You know why? Why? Because you have a warped view of this world and a warped view of this country.
Well, explain that. Let me give you an example.
I'm not going to debate this with you.
Well, let me give you an example of parallel experiences. On September 14th.
Here's the record. All right. You didn't support the action against Afghanistan to remove the Taliban. You were against it.
Why would I want to brutalize and further punish the people in Afghanistan?
Who killed your father?
The people in Afghanistan didn't kill my father.
Sure they did. The Al-Qaeda people were trained there.
The Al-Qaeda people? What about the Afghanistan?
See, I'm more angry about it than you are.
So what about George Bush?
What about George Bush? He had nothing to do with it.
The director, senior, as director.
He had nothing to do with it.
So the people that trained 100,000 mujahideen who were extremists.
I hope your mom isn't watching this. I hope your mother is not watching this.
It's unfair for O'Reilly to evoke both my mom and my father in the interview, especially when I wasn't. You know, I mean, my mom is a grieving widow for a a violent, horrific turn in their lives. My dad was only 55. They were working people, working class, middle class. Like, they were not retiring for a while. And their life is basically destroyed. Their life together is destroyed, and destroyed in circumstances that I wouldn't wish on my worst enemies, including Bill O'Reilly.
Because you That's it. I'm not going to say any more.
Okay.
In respect for your father...
September 14th, you want to know what I was doing?
Shut up.
Oh, please don't tell me to shut up.
In respect for your father, who was a Port Authority worker, a fine American, who got killed unnecessarily by barbarians.
By radical extremists trained by this government.
Respect
not
for
the
him.
people of America,
I'm not
the people, the ruling class, the small minority.
Cut his mic. I'm not going to dress you down anymore, out of respect for your father. We'll be back in a moment with more of the factor.
We're done?
We're done.
You see him gesturing to security guards, and then came the after-film performance.
After they're off the air, he said to the kid something to the effect, "Get out of my studio before I f***ing tear you to pieces." So Jeremy, and I've talked to him since, actually went to the green room to get a cup of coffee.
And the executive producer and the assistant encouraged me to leave the building because they were, quote, concerned that if O'Reilly ran into me in the hallway, he would end up in jail.
Comedians are used to getting heckled, but, you know, that usually happens at a comedy club where the audience has already exceeded their 2-drink minimum. So when a comedian hosts his own big-time TV show and hears something coming from the audience other than applause, it can catch him a little off guard. That's what happened last Friday night during a taping of HBO's Real Time with Bill Maher. It seems that some 9/11 truthers, as they like to call themselves, those who feel that September 11th attacks were orchestrated by the U.S. government, were in the audience, and they started shouting things. Eventually, Maher had enough.
Take that money from Iraq, put it here, and begin to fight that disease so people can live.
See, this is part of the Democrats.
I'm from New Jersey.
Yeah. Like I even, you know, boy, sometimes here at CBS, I wish the sound wasn't working.
Jersey is going.
I didn't even know what that asshole was saying. But you know, see, this is the problem sometimes with government. Hey, do we have some fucking security in this building? Or do I have to come over and pick this guy's ass out of here? Could you get the fuck out of my building? Hey, ouch, 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 ouch. Jesus.
They won't chant Jerry for you, though?
You know, is it that hard to throw somebody out of a building? I'll kick your ass out of here, too. Get her the fuck out.
What is going on here? What's the issue?
Hey, this isn't the Iowa caucus, okay? It's not a debate. It's a debate between us. You're in the audience. Audience comes from the Latin, to listen. What's going on here?
Bill, I was only allowed 2 guests, so things should be okay after that. No, it's great. No.
Anyway.
You have good friends.
That one's not mine.
Oh. Yeah, this is the problem with live television. I guess it gets around that if you're on live, then the nutcases, yeah, and you are a nutcase, Building 7. Yeah, you know what that's all about? Of all the things I've said, and believe me, I've said a lot of things, as you all know, that could get my head on a block. Crazy people who still think the government brought down the Twin Towers in a controlled explosion have to stop pretending that I'm the one who's being naive. How big a lunatic do you have to be to watch 2 giant airliners packed with jet fuel slam into buildings on live TV, igniting a massive inferno that burned for 2 hours, and then think, well, if you believe that was the cause? Stop asking me to raise this ridiculous topic on the show and start asking your doctor if Paxil is right for you. The one that they protest about out here is the people who think that the World Trade Center was a controlled explosion. You see, in that instance, I'm actually defending President Bush. I don't think President Bush brought down the World Trade Center. and cows disagree with me.
This is better than when I was on Springer.
This is Anyway, I have some good news to report. One of our generals this week said that we have now eliminated Al-Qaeda in Iraq, who, by the way, goes by the name now AQI. I love that.
That's cool. Yeah.
It's great. It's like KFC, you know? AQI. We don't make the bombs that kill the troops. We make the hate that makes the bombs. How come I don't fire my audience department is really the question that's running through my mind, right? Yeah, don't be gentle with them. Ass kicking is what's called for.
I agree with Bill Maher on this one. Anybody who thinks that 9/11 was carried out by the government isn't a truther. They're idiots. Can you actually imagine that our government was capable of successfully pulling off 9/11 and then keeping it off of the front page of the New York Times? No. But 12% of Americans are just dumb enough to believe that that's exactly what happened with the U.S. government taking down the World Trade Center, at least number 7. Actually, more Americans think that than think that Congress is doing a good job. I'm not kidding. These truthers are exactly the kind of people who want to rock this nation's foundation, tear us apart, and plant the seeds of dissatisfaction in all of us.
I wanted to ask you, George, I'm really curious to find out what you think about this whole 9/11 conspiracy truth movement thing that's going on across the nation. They interrupted Bill Maher's show last Friday.
Yeah.
What are your personal thoughts on that? Would you care to comment on that?
I always question the received reality. The consensus reality is often intentionally misleading.
Would you support a new investigation on 9/11?
You know, that's like, you know, that they don't investigate themselves in this country. Those people, there would be a white one. It would be like the Kennedy thing. It would be like everything.
Okay.
The people who are in charge do what they want, and they will always do what they want. The power does what it wants to. And I wouldn't trust an investigation. It's just fun. It's good speculation.
Just flown into New York, and we're trying to get down to meet up with our people. We just heard on the cell phone they're being harassed by the police right now. It may already be too late. We'll see what happens when we get there. Alex, hey, everybody, good to see you. Hey, man. Hey, Luke, great to see you, man. We heard from you about an hour ago. Up here. We heard they were threatening to shut you down. What happened?
Yes. They denied the sign permit. They don't want to let us allow sign permit here. We're going to keep doing it no matter what. And we're going to use our voice no matter what. They can't stop us.
We don't have to thank them for our right to be here and demonstrate. We're Americans!
Geraldo Rivera is live over here. 9/11 was an inside job. 9/11 was an inside job. 9/11 was an inside job. 9/11 was an inside job.
Geraldo Rivera is about to go live. We want to jump it basically behind his production.
Send everybody back here. When they're going live, we'll go.
Basically, guerrilla information warfare.
Anybody want this?
Target of opportunity.
When they go back, we'll go.
What are you going to say? We're just going to chant that 9/11 is an inside job. Mainly, it's a message to them that we know.
Radio City Music Hall, just a couple of blocks uptown from Fox World headquarters. Went into a job as an assistant principal in an Ohio medical school. 9/11 was inside. We're in front.
9/11 was an inside job. 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 9/11 was an inside job.
Quiet until they come back to it.
And if you hear the shouting, it's a group of demonstrators who've come. 9/11 was an inside job. Oh, get a life. Get a life. 9/11 was an inside job.
Inside job. 9/11 was an inside job. 9/11 was an inside job. 9/11 was an inside job.
When we come back, we'll take you into the secret world of restroom gay sex. I think these demonstrators are all into restroom gay sex.
inside job. 9/11 was an inside job. 9/11 was an inside job.
Welcome back, everybody. We've been surrounded by an activist, radical, I don't know, communist group. I don't know who the hell they are.
We are change. We are change. We are change. Here we go, guys. Come on.
Well, hell is breaking loose on 6th Avenue. You know, you need a permit to protest or demonstrate here in New York, but this anarchist group came forward. They really are one of the least attractive groups of demonstrators I've ever seen. One of the leaders, I guess, if violence breaks out, don't worry, we can handle it. Our Fox News team can take this bunch of, I don't want to use any foul language, but...
Traitors!
Yeah, no, they got weekend Geraldo, he's doing his show from Times Square, live, and
what was the show?
Geraldo live or some horrible show. And so I watched this all on YouTube. So they show the beginning to the show, and then it goes, all right, this is about half hour in. And then he's telling some story about what's going on, and they're playing some video, and you just hear 9/11 was an inside job. It was loud. Yeah, it was loud as hell. Then they cut back to him, and all the people are behind him, and he starts getting upset. There's actually a video of him giving you guys the finger too. But yeah. And he called. He said they were all ugly and they liked bathroom sex. And he was, but he was on the spot. He didn't know.
Wait.
He did that on
TV.
TV.
Sex. So wait a minute. So
that was in the New York Post.
So wait, Geraldo Rivera
called the protesters ugly and said they like gay bathroom sex.
He literally said that on TV.
Yeah, because he was doing his teaser.
He lost his cool after 10 minutes. Yeah.
Oh yeah, he was doing his teaser for the next segment, which was the gay sex senator story. And then he goes, which I think these guys like too, you know, the gay sex.
One of the world's leading investigative reporters and my dear friend and Fox colleague, Geraldo Rivera, one of the most respected journalists in America, made a stunning revelation days ago about his views of the events on 9/11. Is this healthy skepticism, or has he gone too far? The man himself is here to explain it all. The one, the only, Geraldo Rivera.
Hey,
Geraldo, welcome here. Welcome to Freedom Watch. I want to play a little tape of what you played on your show last weekend. I want you to watch what you watched, and then we're going to play a tape of what you said after you watched it. Here we go.
Live and at large, it's the one 9/11 mystery that endures. World Trade Center building number 7.
You hear that?
Keep your eye on that building. It'll be coming down soon.
They were not sure they were going to be able to contain the fire. And I said, you know, we've had such terrible loss of life. Maybe the smartest thing to do is pull it. And they made that decision to pull, and then we watched the building collapse.
No official account so far addresses the issue now being raised in an extraordinary ad campaign.
I lost my son, my nephew,
my uncle,
my son on September 11th, 2001.
Most people don't know that a third tower fell on September 11th.
World Trade Center 7, a 47-story skyscraper, was not hit by a plane.
Although the official explanation is that fire brought down Building 7.
Over 1,200 architects and engineers have looked into the evidence
and believe there is more to the story.
Up until now, only those considered nut jobs question the official conclusion that office fires caused by the nearby catastrophe of the towers collapsing brought down building number 7.
But I do believe that it is the first time in history that fire has ever melted steel. I do believe that it defies physics for the World Trade Center Tower 7, Building 7, which collapsed in on itself. It is impossible for a building to fall the way it fell without explosives being involved.
And if explosives were involved, that would mean that the most obnoxious protesters in recent years are right.
If you hear the shouting, it's a group of demonstrators who've come. 9/11 was an inside job. Oh, get a life. Get a life. 9/11 was an inside job.
Welcome to the show, everybody. I'm Geraldo Rivera, and that noisy demonstration was more than 2 years ago.
But the folks behind that TV ad you saw earlier are not so easy to dismiss as those demonstrators were. And what caught my eye is their claim that more than 1,300 architects and engineers examined the evidence about Building 7's collapse and disagree with the official report issued by the National Institute of Standards and Technology. Building 7 was no ordinary building. Among other key tenants, including several intelligence and law enforcement agencies, it also housed New York City's Emergency Operations Center, known as Mayor Giuliani's bunker. Here to tell us what they know about its collapse and why they question the official conclusions are Bob McIlvaine, whose son died in the World Trade Center, and Tony Zambati, a mechanical engineer.
Building 7 came down. It went into a sudden collapse across the full width and length of the building for 2.25 seconds, which amounted to 105 feet, or 8 stories, 8 13-foot tall stories. It was in full free fall acceleration. That is impossible because in a natural collapse, columns would have to buckle. When columns buckle, there is a minimum resistance. It's asymptotic, if you know what that means. That means it never goes to zero. So it's impossible. You can't reach.
So here's what, I guess in layman's terms, to just get my hands here, Peter. So what he's saying is that the top floor collapses, hits the next floor, hits the next floor, hits the next floor. So it's bang, 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 bang. The weight of the upper floors.
It would slow down.
Do you want specifically the New York City Council to open its own investigation of the Building 7 collapse?
Absolutely.
And that would satisfy you if they did that?
Well, I'm not done. I'm still a parent. I'm a parent who has an obligation to find out why my son was murdered. As far as this show and New York City, I want the investigation. That will not be sufficient enough.
Your wound. I get that.
And I'm going beyond that.
But it's the beginning.
Of course it's the beginning, but that's why I support this Building What campaign.
Bob McIlvaine, we thank you. Tony Zambati, thank you very much. It is an intriguing topic. I certainly am much more open-minded about it than I was, and it is because of the involvement of the 9/11 families and all these engineers and architects. Clearly, they know more than I do.
It is November 2010. Why are you, with all the spotlight that you can draw to what you say because of who you are, revisiting 9/11 and who caused it or who may have caused it now?
Let me take one brief back step and contextually say that I loathe conspiracy theories.
I know that.
I've investigated the Bermuda Triangle. My son Cruz and I were just watching a documentary about it. The Kennedy assassination. I played the Zapruder film for the first time on national television.
You're not a fan of Jesse Ventura on that one.
Or conspiracies generally.
Could the most obnoxious protesters in recent years be right if the explosives were there and the government didn't cause it, didn't know about it, but won't tell us about it?
Could is a very, very big word, but if indeed explosives were involved, then yes, those loathsome 9/11 were an inside job protesters maybe have some, some reason to have adherents of people more mainstream, more responsible. But what caught my eye here, Judge, and I think that it would have been irresponsible of me because I care so much, is this commercial that the families put out about how not only do they ache and that they want these questions answered, but also that they have these 1,300 architects and engineers who doubt the official conclusion about how Building 7 was brought down.
Do you doubt the official conclusion of how Building 7 came down?
I think that it is highly unlikely that our government would do anything nefarious on a scale of this epic nature. However, the building does appear to come down in a way that is reminiscent of a controlled demolition.
Right.
The building does appear to come down in a way that is reminiscent of a controlled demolition.
Right.
We all think the deepest recesses of our mind, I gather, could there have been great culpability and criminality within the framework of the United States? And if so, an independent inquiry would certainly do a hell of a job in picking at the scab that represents.
The fact that the 9/11 investigation went from the moment the planes hit to the moment that the buildings fell and nothing before and nothing after, I think makes that investigation completely illegitimate. you know, if you're going to do a crime investigation, you have to find motive, you have to find, you know, there has to be and we didn't follow that.
Yes, exactly.
It was quickly pushed away, obviously.
Sure, the evidence was removed from the crime scene.
There's no evidence, the biggest crime.
Who was telling all these guys to remove everything? Like, I'll never forget, Rudy Giuliani bragged 24 hours later that they had already pulled 120 truckloads of debris was gone. And initially, you as an individual go, oh, yay, isn't that great? It sounds good on the surface. But then when you think about it, you go, well, wait a minute. That's 120 truckloads of evidence that you see in hindsight that were removed within 24 hours.
I mean, 70% of the questions proposed by the victims' family members during the 9/11 Commission were completely ignored. So that fact alone, I think, begs for a real investigation into the matter. You also have 60% of the commission members at this point who have said something to the effect that the investigation was thwarted, that their attempts to investigate were blocked, that they were lied to by the government and by the CIA. They used every word except the word cover-up, basically, and one or two of them may have even used that word as well. So when you have all of these people dissenting from the validity of the 9/11 Commission report, even 60% of its own members, the people who sat on the commission, I mean, what else can you do but reinvestigate, or maybe investigate properly for the first time?
They weren't going to investigate anything. They told us their version of what happened, and we're expected to solely believe that, no matter what evidence then surfaces. And so you look at the fact that they didn't want a commission to be formed, and when pressure came from the families and they demanded the commission, well, who's the first person they come up with to run it? Henry Kissinger. Well, there was outcry and outrage over that because of all of his contacts and everything he's into. So they had to remove him, and then they came up with Keene and the other guy. And you know, then you look at it from a logical point of view. Did they really and truly want to investigate? Well, when you learn that they spent $100 million to investigate Whitewater, $100 million, where ultimately in the end, I guess they learned the president cheated on his wife. Maybe there's more to it, maybe not. But the point I'm getting to is the $100 million. And then initially, for the murder of 3,000 people at 9/11, they allocate $4 million. $4. Now, it ended up, I think, going to 12 or 13 million in the end, but that alone should cause you to say there wasn't a real investigation going to be done here.
I would like to see someone address the peer-reviewed scientific work done by Dr. Stephen Jones and Danish scientist Niels Harrit on their findings of thermitic residue found in separate dust samples collected from Ground Zero. That's a big question. That's a recent development, but it raises very disturbing questions. If they're finding unexploded nanothermite in dust samples collected from Ground Zero, and if in the NIST report they admit that the steel collected from Ground Zero was never tested for explosive residues, then, and as well, the NIST report also, or the FEMA report, denies the occurrence of blast events happening inside Building 7, for instance, at all. I would like to see the theory of controlled demolition as it applies to the collapse of Towers 1, 2, and 7, given a fair and honest assessment by credible experts from both sides of the fence, but it would be great to have it done within the context of a subpoena-powered investigation where the public could be confident in the answers garnered from such an investigation.
I believe some of them will go back to sleep because some of them didn't want to get woke up. But there are a group of intelligent young people out there, not very many of them my age or your age. Most of the people my age or your age think just exactly like what you said. Things are the way they are, don't mess with them, go do your job, keep your head down, you know, don't stir up anything.
We were the generation that believed in free love. Now we're telling you abstinence. We're the generation that used drugs, and yet today we're fighting the biggest war on drugs in the history of the land. Exact opposite of what we were. We're the generation that should have known about war, that should have known about getting into a deceitful war. And yet here we're the leaders now, and we've taken the young people into the same thing that we did. And that's what troubles me the most. Where the hell are all the people? Did we all go to sleep? Did we all become born again Republicans? What happened to the Vietnam generation that ought to be in charge today, that ought to know better?
Again, Project for a New American Century writes that document, they get their new Pearl Harbor, and then it's basically open season on the Middle East. And not only that, but you have simultaneously the drastic curtailing of civil liberties here on American soil with the passage of the Patriot Act and the Military Commissions Act and Homegrown Terrorism and Prevention Act, all of which contain lots of language which strips us of our civil rights. We no longer have habeas corpus. So 9/11 has served to basically solidify the grip of control of the American people here at home, and has opened the door to unending war around the world.
I want people to start standing up. I want people, first of all, to wake up, those that haven't already, and then just know that they have a voice, and that en masse, in numbers, they have a bigger voice. And reach out to your local politicians. Get organized. Get petitions going. Make the voice louder. Bring this thing to a point where they cannot ignore it, where it isn't just, a whack job actor from Hollywood talking about fantasy theories. Get involved, people. Get out there. Do something. It's one thing to say, and I really appreciate all the comments and all the support, but take that energy and put it into action. Put it into action and demand the truth. Get on the right side of history.
Dissension is the greatest form of patriotism. If you don't hold your elected officials' feet to the fire, for lack of a better term, you are going to get bad government. Remember that. You don't want to go along to get along.
There's a great fear that's gripping the country since 9/11. People are afraid to speak out who spoke out before because they don't want to be considered unpatriotic.
Don't be afraid to be ridiculed by these people. If 9/11 was a phony, and I know it was, then stand up and say it's a phony. Don't be scared to tell the truth. Don't allow their powers of trying to make you look silly to frighten you.
The people in power want people to feel like they can't affect change, that this system doesn't work. And the more hopeless people are, and the more downtrodden they are, the more cynical they are, the more pliable they are, and the more they can be abused. And so, an actor who comes out to speak against, put on a terror watch list has a very chilling effect to people.
Yeah. One last question. Are you surprised this is happening under Obama?
I am surprised it's happening under Obama. He promised so much. At the same time, he's done a lot, but he's continued a lot of, the Bush-Cheney, even Cheney came out yesterday and was praising Obama for adopting so many of their policies on terror. It's not going to happen from above. We are the change that we're waiting for.
That's what our microphone says.
Yes, I love that. We are the change that we're waiting for. It's not going to happen from above. Anything worth a damn that's ever happened on behalf of the people has always come up from the people and forced itself onto the power above. And that's the way it always is, and it's the way it's always going to be. And I hope this is a moment. I see all these things as a real opportunity for people to get involved and to learn that they have a voice, and to actually use that voice to institute change.
It is time for us all to dig deeper, because this could be an inside job. It's time for American citizens to stand up and pay attention to what we're here for and what this country was founded upon, and where it could be going if we, each one of us, does not stand up and write our congressmen, our senators, and let them know we are very concerned with what the Patriot Act means. What is it taking away from us concerning homeland security? What are we losing in the Patriot Act. What are we losing in terms of freedom? We need each other to stand forth and look deeper, go deeper. If it's an inside job, we the people are the government. We can help fix it. And the way of positive thinking and positive living and being a great messenger of hope and a great role model for what freedom truly is. America can do that if the people get involved.
It's a little bit after midnight on September 11th, 2007. And I thought I wanted to say something. Somebody asked me recently in an Ask Sam what my experience was on 9/11 6 years ago. And what happened was we were moving to Los Angeles. Danny had already come out here and then had gone to work in Las Vegas on something. I stayed in New York for a couple of weeks, and I stayed at Liza's because I was working on the Michael Jackson TV special at Madison Square Garden. So I was staying there. And I was scheduled to fly and move here officially on September 11th. But I was really done with my work, and I was eager to get here because our stuff was on a truck and I didn't know when it would arrive. So on the 9th, I changed my flight from the 11th to the 10th. I was scheduled on the 11th on a 9 a.m. flight from JFK. And I changed it to the 10th and flew in, and the next morning there was nothing in our house except a box springs and a mattress and a few pots and pans and a small TV and a phone and a machine. And the next morning at the crack of dawn, the phone kept ringing and ringing and ringing and ringing. And I thought something horrible must have happened, because who would be calling me? How many people even have this new number? And I dragged myself out of bed and went to the kitchen and screened the call, and it was Liza screaming, "They're blowing up New York! They're blowing up New York!" And I picked up the phone and I said, "What are you talking about?" And she said, "Quick, turn on the TV." And I did. And for half an hour we sat in silence as we watched the television together and watched the building fall. And then I called Danny in Las Vegas and woke him up, and he turned on the TV and we watched. It was so unbelievable. And we felt so like we had abandoned our home that was on fire. You know, we were New Yorkers. And we had a lot of trouble finding a sense of community here, I have to say. Because the country was dealing with it, but New York was dealing with it in a different way. And I think that if it had happened before we left, we wouldn't have moved. It was well, I know all of us have our experiences. We lost a friend who we knew from our neighborhood in our dog park that had never been to the World Trade Center before and went there for a meeting that morning and died. So this is to commemorate all those who lost their lives, all of those who lost people that they love, and all of us who take advantage of this opportunity in the midst of this memory and this anniversary and this pain, to remember why we're on this earth and what we are here to do for each other. It is not a time to blame. It is not a time to point fingers. It is a time to understand and take responsibility and come together in unity. God bless you. The best way that we can get through any kind of pain and any kind of memory and any kind of these things that have affected us so deeply is by doing all we can for each other, by taking care of each other with love and grace and dignity and respect, and do something wonderful for someone. God bless you, and I hope you have a wonderful day. In spite of what it means to us, it was a day of awakening, and that, with all of its tragedy, is a very powerful opportunity. So take it in. God bless.
All around me are familiar faces, worn out places, worn out faces, bright and early for their daily races, going nowhere, going nowhere. Their tears are filling up their glasses, no expression, drown my sorrow. No tomorrow, no tomorrow. And I find it kind of funny, I find it kind of sad. The dreams in which I'm dying are the best I've ever had. I find it hard to tell you, I find it hard to take. When people run in circles, it's a very, very mad world. Mad world. Children waiting for the day they feel good. Happy birthday, happy birthday. And to feel the way that every child should sit and listen, sit and listen. Went to school and I was very nervous. No one knew me, no one knew me. Hello teacher, tell me what's my lesson.